It's Sunday the 3rd of September 2017. This is a chart update for the gold price and related markets. Gold had its best week of the year this week, up about $35 to $13.25 US, and it closed near the highs as well. The key day obviously was that break of 1300, which occurred on Monday night Australian time, Monday US, and that then there was another North Korean missile test as well that sort of amplified that a little. Had that nice sort of big move up and then a couple of pullbacks in the next couple of days, but not above sort of the midpoint of that main candle, and then it closed on the highs. So we're still in that Trump reversal day, still sort of governed by that a little. Starting to get slightly overbought here, but not, it's getting toward the upper end there. I'm looking for some consolidation here. If we can consolidate above this sort of, probably above that 1310 level, I think you're looking very positive. Again, obviously we've broken out of this long-term downtrend in the last few weeks. Potentially you sort of, a mirror of this move here. These ranges tend to repeat quite well in the gold price. If you've been watching these videos for a while, you can see I was tracking these down moves and up moves for a long time in 2014 and 15. And you tend to get some nice repeats there. So maybe we're starting to hit sort of the end of this move here around this 1325, 1330 sort of level. Potentially maybe we see something more like this one here, where it's, there's still more upside toward the highs. But these are just guides, and these trading ranges do tend to repeat quite well in gold. And then gold is a trading instrument, so charts are important for me, more important than most other things you look at. So yeah, looking pretty good on the gold price itself. Some of the other things I've been tracking, the dollar index had a pretty poor week again, but it did start to see some quite nice reversal candles there on a bit of a bit higher volume. You can see last sort of 4 days, all way above the the last sort of 50. I think there's a 50-day moving average I've got in there, a 40-day moving average of the volume. So it's all some quite high volume candles. But again, the data is not overly positive, I think, for the US dollar. The jobs data came out on Friday, and that was pretty negative. And there's I think some inflation data came out. There's no signs of further interest rate hikes this year. I just don't think the economy is strong enough for that to happen. But I still don't think this is, after this, as I said in the last video, a move like this down doesn't generally see a consolidation of only a week or two before heading lower. I think you're more likely to see a bit of sideways trading here for maybe another month or so potentially, or more, before I think a further leg down. But we'll wait and see then. But I think most likely is sideways action here. This 94 level looks like it's going to be sort of the line in the sand to see if this is if this starts to form a bottom. That would be your breakout line there. So I think that's, again, looking fairly sort of sideways for now. The S&P 500, I think, is again near its all-time highs. Doesn't make a lot of sense, but this market's sort of running on fumes, as I've said before. So yeah, while that's at these levels, and the longer it stays at sort of these nosebleed levels, the better chance of a pullback, and pullbacks in the S&P 500 are almost always good for gold. So that's sort of been one of the reasons I've been owning gold shares, because I think that pullback is coming. The fact that those shares have been rising in the last few weeks anyway is positive. So you've got that insurance there if this S&P 500 chart starts to come off, and that affects the other charts. I use that as my, that's a bellwether for all world markets. The ASX 200 actually probably looks one of the weakest charts of all sort of the larger. Just get it up there. Where are we? XJO. That looks like one of the weakest charts of the larger world indices. You see this really big this massive volatility and trading range here, sideways for almost 3 months now. It's been going between this range of sort of 56.50 and 5,800. And it's almost unheard of that it's gone like that. If you look back in all the sort of, this is 3 or 4 years worth of data, it's hard to find a trading range this sort of tight and long, and this sort of range almost always resolves in a strong move out of it. Now, my feeling is that's going to be a down move. I think, this looks like a classic sort of head and shoulders top, and we're a right shoulder here. This red box here is the key zone. If it breaks through there, I think you're looking like at a move down toward this longer term trend line. So that comes in around sort of 5,400. That's sort of the zone I'm thinking this moves down to, because this does not look like a pretty chart. If you look at if you want to get down to sort of the micro structure of this index, the major parts of it, the banks, Telstra, and a few other, Woolworths, Wesfarmers, these sort of stocks, none of them are doing that well. Some of the mining stocks have probably done the best in the last 6 months, like BHP and Rio, but the larger constituents of the index are not performing well, and that's generally going to pull this index down. The rest of the market in Australia isn't large enough. So if those big weighted stocks are going down, the index is gradually going to probably move with them. So that's looking pretty bearish, and I think I've been watching this for a month or two, and it still hasn't broken down. But I think it's inevitable that it breaks down. Maybe it breaks upward, but it doesn't look like there's a lot of momentum there. The gold price in Australian dollars has had a nice move up from the lows that I talked about a few weeks ago. That coincided with sort of highs in the Australian dollar, obviously, when it got down to this sort of 1560, 1570 sort of area. I talked about this long-term trend line, how it had broken through there, but I thought this was a bit of a false break, and it was a nice buying opportunity in some of the quality gold stocks. Northern Star and St. Barbara are the two I'd mentioned there, and it's come up nicely, and it's back up to sort of the 1660 level, which has kind of been a bit of a 1650, 1660 has been a bit of a line in the sand for 2 or 3 years now, but it's looking positive there. Obviously, that's going to depend on the currency somewhat, but the currency hasn't. While the gold price has moved upward, the currency, the Australian dollar, hasn't moved that far upward against the US dollar in the last 2 or 3 weeks. But it's probably looking fairly positive, I would say. Let's see if I can pull that up. No, you have to take my word for it. But it's the Australian dollar is sort of going up between that 78 and 80 cents level against the US dollar, and looking reasonably good. Some of the gold indices, the GDX and the GDXJ, are looking very good. This is the GDX. It's had a nice break out of this descending triangle pattern, and looking like there's more upside here, probably another 10% sort of upside. I don't trade this index, but I use it as sort of my bellwether for a lot of the mid cap names, if there's any more legs in the runs that they're having now. So I'm thinking this has still got upside at 10 to 15% before I reassess there. The GDXJ was pretty similar. I think that's the chart might even be a little bit more bullish there. It's probably only maybe not quite as much upside potential in that one in the short term, but it definitely has had a nice break out above this sort of 33 level. So all in all, very good week for gold. By far the most bullish sort of setup it's had for the last 6 months. And, people are starting to talk about it, but I don't think it's really overbought here. I think there's still plenty of good moves in some of these stocks. Potentially, maybe it's time to start rotating into some of the junior names that have been. Maybe some of the money starts to flow from usually the bigger names start to move and the smaller names start to move later when that money sort of flows down. So that's what I'm kind of looking for, and you've seen it a little bit in the last week or two, that some of the small caps are starting to move in a way they haven't for 6 to 9 months. So all in all, very good week for gold.